Welcome back. If you've made it this far through 2 previous videos and then a delay before this one was released, then you are truly dedicated. Most of the other space cadets jumped ship about 2 minutes into the first video, after the flashy motion graphics ran out, and at this point there are so few people watching that I could probably safely store my credit card details in this video. But you're still here, so thanks for joining me. And although I trust you completely, let's put a pin in the whole credit card idea and instead see what Lister and Shaw have been up to. After saving the life of a fellow recruit, they made it back to the Vanguard. The Leaving the Planet page in the shipbook tells us which game components to put away and which to leave out for the upcoming ship management. I should mention that we're going to leave point of interest cards and threat cards on the Planetopedia map for now. That's because in this game the galaxy is persistent and planets don't reset themselves every time you take off or land. Later on we'll use a planet record sheet to record the state of the Carter space station, but for now we'll leave it set up on the table. There is an exception to this rule though. Some point of interest and threat cards have this do not save icon. Those cards should be returned to the card tray right away, so they won't be included on the planet record sheet. On the docking page we start by checking whether the mission was a failure. The mission failure token is pretty hard to miss, but even an unfulfilled mission card still on the Planetopedia means that the mission failed. As you will no doubt one day discover, there are 2 penalties for failing a mission: lowering your morale and automatically failing to rank up. So I'd recommend sorting out those mission cards before liftoff, unless you want to spend the next few months scrubbing the ship's deck with a bucket and mop. In this case, the mission card was removed off screen, so the mission was a success and we can proceed to step 2. Each lander can only hold a limited number of discoveries, so if you've gone over your limit, you discard the extras now. Unique discovery cards never get discarded, but they do count towards the lander's limit, which means that if you run out of room, it's the non-unique discoveries which will have to be abandoned. In step 3, players recover all crew members from behind the resting crew divider. These go into each player's hand, and they're now considered available and ready for active duty. Without wanting to get too far ahead of myself, I'll point out that we'll be relying on this pool of crew members for quite some time, since they carry over into the next game session. We may assign some of them to shipbook tasks, either in this game or the first half of our next game, but ultimately we'll have to pick our next away team from this pool. For that reason, you must always hang on to at least 1 crew member from each section, in case they're needed for the away team. As you probably noticed, Dave Lister and Elizabeth Shaw aren't in this pool of available crew, so they can't be in the next away team. On the debriefing page, we start with an opportunity to rank up. A rank up card required us to gain at least 2 lead tokens on any discovery decks, but sadly we didn't even manage that, which is why the card was never flipped. Hypothetically, if the card had been flipped to the completed side, then we'd now compare the number of success tokens we gathered to the number shown on the rank up card. By the way, rank up cards are single use. In other words, if they're used to promote anyone, then the card gets removed from the game. But in this case, no one got promoted, so it goes back into the pool of rank up cards. Next, we get an opportunity to purchase shiny new section dice by spending success tokens. If you were fortunate and wealthy enough to purchase the sparkly translucent deluxified dice, then this step will be extra sweet. Those of us who backed just the base game will have to settle for the ordinary dice, which are made from reconstituted space weevils and used tea bags. The cost is equal to the number of dice each section already has, so new dice become more expensive the more you acquire. In our game, each section has 5 section dice, so we'll need to spend 5 success tokens to buy a new one. Fortunately, we have just enough. By the way, if you ever find that you're 1 or 2 success tokens short, you may be able to reduce the cost by, you guessed it, assigning available crew members. So we'll spend our 5 success tokens and all 4 sections gain 1 new die, of their choice. Note that there are many different varieties of dice and not all of them are available from the beginning of the campaign, so be sure to check page 37 of the rulebook to see which dice you are allowed to purchase. On the unloading page, we start by unloading discovery cards from the lander. Unique discoveries go into the shipbook, and ordinary discoveries go into the card tray, behind the Gathered Discoveries divider. Some discovery cards have a when unloaded effect, so keep an eye out for those. Each time you complete an entire row of unique discoveries, you gain some new bonus. In this case, we've just completed the second row, which gives us the Total Perspective Vortex card. That goes in the awaiting envelope for now, and it'll be installed as a bridge upgrade in my next game. The lander goes back into the game box, and the lander mods go into the awaiting envelope. The reason we don't put the lander mods back in the hangar right away is to avoid flipping back and forth between different parts of the shipbook. As a general rule, you'll advance through the shipbook from start to finish and should only jump to different sections when instructed. Next is the med bay, which Elizabeth Shaw would be very relieved to see if she weren't drifting in and out of consciousness. But before we can tend to her, we have some other steps to take. If we had any med bay upgrades in the awaiting envelope, we'd install those now, but we have none. So it's on to step 2, release non-injured crew members. Dave Lister doesn't have any injury cards below his player board, so we put him behind the resting crew divider. Step 3 is for any crew members already in medbay to recover by moving one slot to the right. So Marvin's moderate injuries become light. There are more slots over the page, but they're still empty. You can also assign available crew members as therapists for additional recovery. So I think I'll assign Maureen as Marvin's therapist, which enables him to recover an additional step and move back into a hand of available crew. As always, I could only do that because Maureen wasn't the last available crew member in the recon section. And now she goes to resting crew. With that done, we finally get to gently ease Elizabeth into one of the recovery beds. She has 3 injuries, so she goes into one of the critical injury slots on the left. Step 5 is to make a survival check. This only applies to patients with critical injuries and involves rolling 3 injury dice. If you roll 2 or more damage icons, and at least one of them is heavy damage, then the patient dies. Which means that, tragically, Shaw did not pull through. God damn. If there's one thing you can count on from an Awaken Realms game, it's that harsh reminder of the fragility of our own existence. So she shuffles off both her mortal coil and her rank sleeve, then lies in state on her crew board. Pausing only briefly to change into our funeral clothes, it's onto the memorial wall, where Shaw gets interred. She must go into the leftmost security slot. There's a bonus printed on that slot, which I can apply now. I'd prefer not to get bogged down on the details of that particular bonus, but I do want to commend Awaken Realms for devising a mechanism which actively mitigates the setback of a crew member's death. Far too many game developers simply pile on and punish setbacks with even more penalties because they think it's thematic. If a player is starting to lose, don't respond by making the game even harder. In fact, why the hell would you even... Shaw's funeral service was very moving and ends with the crew boards going back into the box. And hooray, we've reached the very last page of the shipbook, the save point. It's at this point that we record the state of the planet board on a planet record sheet. The main exception to this is when the landing card, that's the one which slots into the planetary scanner, has been removed from the game. If that happens, then it's a bit like throwing up at a work party at your boss's house. You're never visiting there again, so you don't need to record the state you left it in. If you're enjoying an all-weekend board gaming marathon, then you may choose to launch straight into your next gaming session, form a new away team, and revisit the planet you just left. If that happens, you can leave the planet board set up, and you don't need to record it on a planet record sheet. And that's it! We made it to the end of the entire video series. If you thought watching them was a marathon, spare a thought for the poor idiot who thought that making them was a good idea at the time. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your interstellar adventures.